A young woman in a maid's uniform enters a grand mansion, looking lost and out of place. The head maid hands her a feather duster, her expression stern. The maid takes it, her mind flashing back to a different time. She sees herself as a handmaiden, joyfully pushing her mistress on a swing in a beautiful garden. She remembers her mistress's rise to power, walking beside her into the imperial palace. The mistress becomes the empress, seated on the golden throne. With the handmaiden standing faithfully by her side, the memory fades, leaving the maid looking sad and alone in the modern mansion. She starts to clean the staircase, when a spoiled young woman in a pink dress storms down, yelling at the staff below. The maid accidentally brushes her with the duster. The spoiled woman explodes with anger, shouting and gesturing wildly. She shoves past the maid and descends the stairs. The maid watches her with quiet contempt. Two older maids gossip nearby, explaining the situation. The maid listens, her eyes widening in realization. Just then, a new woman arrives, dressed in simple white, pulling a suitcase. The maids all turn and stare. The maid freezes, her jaw dropping. The newcomer is the spitting image of her mistress, the empress from her past life. A vision of the empress in her royal robes flashes before the maid's eyes. The woman speaks, and the maid drops her duster with a clatter. Overcome with emotion, she runs across the hall and throws her arms around the stunned woman. The woman stands stiffly, while the other maids watch in stunned silence. The head maid rushes forward, pulling the maid away from the newcomer, scolding her. The maid looks down, then back at the newcomer with fierce loyalty. Just then, the spoiled woman enters, a smug smile on her face. She approaches the newcomer, taking her hand with a sickeningly sweet expression. She speaks, her words dripping with false kindness, but her eyes are cold and calculating. She tells the newcomer she'll be staying in the storage room, a cruel smirk on her lips. She orders the head maid to prepare it, who bows in submission. The spoiled woman then turns to the maid, her voice sharp and commanding. Suddenly, the maid's hand whips out, striking the spoiled woman across the face with a loud crack. Everyone freezes. The maid stands tall, her eyes flashing with the authority of her past life. A memory floods her mind. She's in the palace, a formidable figure, in her own right, teaching the other handmaidens with a stern hand. The spoiled woman lunges forward, screaming, but the maid effortlessly catches her wrist, twisting it behind her back. The woman cries out in pain. The maid holds her firmly, her voice cold and steady as she lectures the struggling woman, then shoves her away. The woman stumbles, her face a mixture of shock and humiliation. She threatens the maid, her voice trembling with rage. But the maid just scoffs, her words cutting the woman down to size. The spoiled woman is left speechless, fuming. She points a trembling finger at the maid, ordering her to leave. The maid just laughs in her face, then marches upstairs. The spoiled woman screams after her. Moments later, the maid reappears on the balcony above, holding a suitcase full of the spoiled woman's clothes. With a defiant look, she dumps the entire contents of the suitcase over the railing. The clothes rain down on the shocked onlookers below. The spoiled woman stares up in disbelief. The maid leans over the railing, a triumphant smirk on her face, as the spoiled woman shrieks in impotent fury. The maid stands on the balcony, calmly tossing the spoiled woman's clothes to the floor below. The spoiled woman shrieks, her voice filled with impotent rage. Later, in a luxurious bedroom, the maid and the newcomer lie on the bed. The newcomer stares at the ceiling, her expression troubled. The maid looks at her with a gentle, reassuring smile. She sits up, her eyes filled with unwavering belief in her mistress. She then presents the newcomer with a business textbook. The newcomer looks at it, then at the maid, a spark of hope igniting in her eyes. She takes the book, a determined smile spreading across her face. In the living room, the spoiled woman sobs hysterically in her mother's arms. The father and brother look on, their faces a mixture of pity and anger. The mother comforts her daughter, while the father reassures her with a stern expression. The spoiled woman plays the victim, her words dripping with false sincerity. The brother explodes, calling the newcomer a peasant. The spoiled woman continues her act, pretending to be the bigger person. But the brother isn't having it. He declares his loyalty to his adopted sister, calling the newcomer a stranger. He stands up, vowing to throw the newcomer out himself. Later, the newcomer is reading in another room when the brother storms in. He confronts her, his face a mask of contempt. The spoiled woman watches from the doorway, a smug smile on her face. The brother throws a credit card on the table, telling the newcomer to take the money and leave. The newcomer looks hurt. She refuses the money and turns to go. But the spoiled woman blocks her path, her voice dripping with venom. Suddenly, the maid appears, carrying a tea tray, a knowing smile on her face. She puts the brother in his place, her voice calm but firm. The brother stares at her, stunned into silence, as the maid stands before him, a picture of quiet confidence. She then grabs him by the hair and slams his face onto the table. The newcomer and the spoiled woman cry out in shock. The maid holds the struggling brother down, her expression unyielding. She lectures him on his disrespect, her voice like ice. The brother sputters in defiance, but the maid just shoves his face harder into the table. The spoiled woman tries to intervene, but the maid's glare stops her in her tracks. Finally, the brother relents. Mumbling a forced apology, the newcomer accepts it with a sad smile. The maid releases him, and he scrambles to his feet, his face a mask of humiliation and rage. He points a trembling finger at them, vowing revenge, then storms out of the room. The brother bursts into the living room, complaining loudly to his parents. The spoiled woman follows, putting on a show of fake remorse. The parents listen, their expressions hardening. Just then, the maid and the newcomer enter. The father turns on the newcomer, his voice cold and accusatory. The newcomer flinches, looking down at the floor. The spoiled woman continues her act, pretending to defend the newcomer, but the parents aren't fooled. The mother looks at the newcomer with disdain, comparing her unfavorably to the spoiled woman. The father agrees, telling the spoiled woman that she will always be their daughter. The brother chimes in, demanding that the newcomer be thrown out. The newcomer looks heartbroken, her eyes filling with tears. But the maid takes her hand, her expression resolute. She stands tall, a silent protector. The maid steps forward, her voice clear and strong. She reminds the parents of their true lineage, her words cutting through their prejudice. The parents look uneasy, their faces a mixture of guilt and defiance. The maid continues, her words a powerful indictment of their neglect and poor parenting. The parents are stunned into silence, their faces flushing with shame. The brother tries to interject, but the mother shushes him, a thoughtful expression on her face. She looks at the spoiled woman, then at the newcomer, a flicker of doubt in her eyes. She orders the spoiled woman and the brother to apologize. The brother protests, but a look from his mother silences him. The maid, seeing her advantage, brings out a tea set for a traditional ceremony. The newcomer takes it, her hands trembling slightly, and offers it to her parents. The brother objects loudly. But the father, his face a mask of grim determination, accepts the tea. Just then, an elderly man with a cane enters the room, his presence commanding immediate respect. The father helps the elderly man to the sofa, a look of deference on his face. The old man sits, his gaze sweeping over the room. He addresses the newcomer, his voice raspy with age. The newcomer greets him respectfully, a slight tremor in her voice. The maid then steps forward, performing a formal, elegant bow that takes the old man by surprise. He recognizes the ancient greeting, a look of astonishment on his face. A memory flashes through his mind, a young boy learning the same bow from a graceful woman. The old man stares at the maid, a dawning realization in his eyes. The maid, seeing her opportunity, respectfully requests that the old man accept the newcomer's tea. The brother and the spoiled woman try to object, but the old man silences them with a look. The maid, with a triumphant smile, takes the tea tray from the newcomer and then slaps the spoiled woman across the face. The maid then turns on the brother, her voice filled with righteous anger. The old man watches, a flicker of amusement in his eyes. He takes the tea from the newcomer and drinks it with a thoughtful expression. The spoiled woman and the brother watch in horror, their faces pale with shock. The old man sets the cup down and declares that the newcomer is now officially part of the family, his voice ringing with authority. The spoiled woman and the brothers stare at him, their faces a mixture of disbelief and despair. The old man praises the maid, her loyalty and composure impressing him. He then puts her in charge of the spoiled woman and the brothers' education. Much to their horror, the maid accepts the responsibility with a humble bow. The old man then announces that it's time for school, and instructs the maid to accompany the newcomer, ensuring she is treated with respect. Later, in the mansion's garden, the newcomer waits for the spoiled woman, who arrives dressed in a pristine school uniform. She taunts the newcomer, who is not wearing the uniform. The spoiled woman sneers, telling the newcomer that she doesn't belong, and that she should go back to the countryside. Just then, the maid arrives, also in a school uniform. She rolls up her sleeves, a determined look on her face. The spoiled woman tries to run, but the maid trips her, sending her sprawling to the ground. The maid then grabs her by the collar, her eyes flashing with anger. She accuses the spoiled woman of trying to sabotage the newcomer, then slaps her across the face. The spoiled woman screams in pain and surprise. She then strips off her own uniform, leaving the spoiled woman shivering in her underwear. The maid presents the uniform to the newcomer, who takes it with a grateful smile. The spoiled woman storms off, vowing revenge. The maid helps the newcomer into the uniform, her expression a mixture of pride and affection. The spoiled woman watches from a distance, her eyes filled with hatred. The maid and the newcomer walk to school, sharing a bag of chips. The maid warns the newcomer to be wary of the spoiled woman, but the newcomer reassures her with a smile. Later, in the classroom, the spoiled woman sits at her desk, nursing a bruised cheek. The maid and the newcomer enter, and the spoiled woman glares at them. As the maid passes, the spoiled woman tries to trip her, but the maid deftly avoids the trap. She then picks up the chair and places it beside the spoiled woman's desk. The newcomer sits down, ignoring the spoiled woman's angry glares. The maid smiles at the newcomer, then turns to the spoiled woman with a warning look. She then leaves, waving goodbye to the newcomer. The spoiled woman watches her go, a look of pure hatred on her face. In another classroom, a young man with red-streaked hair is teasing the maid, who is trying to study. She overhears some girls gossiping about a fight, and her face pales with worry. She grabs the young man's hand, her eyes wide with fear, then rushes out of the room. The maid enters the classroom, her eyes scanning the room. She approaches the spoiled woman, demanding to know where the newcomer is. The spoiled woman feigns ignorance, but the maid grabs her wrist, her eyes flashing with anger. She threatens the spoiled woman, her voice low and menacing. The spoiled woman, terrified, finally confesses that the newcomer went to the restroom. The maid releases her and rushes out. In the restroom, a group of girls corner the newcomer, taunting her and calling her names. The spoiled woman watches from the sidelines, a smug smile on her face. She pretends to defend the newcomer, but her words only add fuel to the fire. The girls close in, their faces twisted with malice. The spoiled woman watches, a look of pure evil in her eyes. As the newcomer stands alone, surrounded, and helpless, the maid bursts into the restroom. Just as the bullies are about to tear the newcomer's clothes off, a dangerous glint in her eye. She then unleashes a flurry of kicks and punches, taking down the bullies one by one. The newcomer watches in awe, as the maid single-handedly defeats the entire group. The maid then grabs a nearby water hose and turns it on the cowering bullies, soaking them from head to toe. They scream and scatter, Their faces a mixture of fear and humiliation. The maid drops the hose, her expression triumphant. As she stands amidst the chaos, a true warrior, the bullies taunt the maid. But she just smiles. Taking the newcomer by the hand, the newcomer looks at her, her eyes filled with a mixture of fear and admiration. The maid leads her out of the restroom.